Education Leadership. This is episode 199. I'm your host, ID340 on third. Tonight's panelists are Dr. Poussaint, Buddy Thornton, and Felicha Stanley. Buddy Thornton, please say hello to the people.
Good evening, everybody. And I am just absolutely honored to be here with these extremely well prepared panelists. And I think we're going to have to go further than rock the boat tonight. I think we have to shove it right out of the harbor.
I love that. And Dr. Theresa Poussaint, please say hello again to the people.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Poussaint here. It's a pleasure to be with you guys again. I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening. Thanks for the invite, Isaiah.
Thank you for accepting it. And we got a newcomer here, Felicha Stanley. I think she's out of Texas. Please, Felicha, welcome, and say hello to the people.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Let's go around the horn really quick, and I just want to do this. We haven't done it in a while, but it's so overdue. I want you panelists to kind of tell the listener audience a little bit about yourself and what you got going on currently. Let's start with Buddy Thornton.
Thank you for the prompt, Isaiah. My name is Buddy Thornton. I'm in the Phoenix metropolitan area in Arizona. I am a multiple international best-selling author of a series of behavioral books. And, right now I am the co-founder, and we are pushing out the FightersForHope.org organization. And we are focused on addressing mental health awareness and suicide prevention.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. Dr. Theresa Poussaint, talk about it.
Yes, I am currently an adjunct professor. I teach undergraduate and graduate level courses, primarily master's in business administration, so MBA students. I love teaching. It is my passion. I am also the author of the book, The Power to Navigate Your Destiny, the 5 essential principles you need to access the power within. I'm basically just talking about my journey of being married, going through marriage and divorce and deaths and all of that while pursuing my higher education and getting my doctorate degree. So I enjoy speaking, motivational speaking, so I enjoy speaking and encouraging and empower people.
Ooh, this is going to be good tonight. So we already got 2 authors that we know that's on the panelists tonight. Wow, thank you for that. And Felicha Stanley, talk about it.
All right. Right now, I have a 3rd annual Connections Conference for aspiring authors and self-publishers. This is an annual event that I do every year, and this year's our third time having this event. And this event is coming up real soon. It is Saturday, July 20th. It's here in Dallas at the Nash Davis Recreation Center. In addition to that, I have been an educational consultant for a couple of years now, and now I'm really taking it to a higher level. I am a distinguished Toastmaster. I love Toastmasters, and I always talk about not only the speaking part of Toastmasters, but the leadership part. This past year, I was the spring conference chair for District 50 Toastmasters. It was held here in Dallas, Texas, in April 30th. In addition to that, I'm currently writing a memoir about life challenges, which is due out sometimes next year. I'm not going to say when because I don't like to put a date to something until I'm at least 80% sure. And last but not least, I am the founder of the nonprofit Women Empowering Women located here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I'm excited because we help women and young girls.
Wow. Let's go right into this because we got the people, we got the right people. Now we got to make sure we got the right program, and so we can put this right system together for tonight's topic. Tonight's topic is, are we teaching what needs to be taught? Now, before we go into this, I want to read what I want to read what Yale published last year. They said that, now they're talking about black students. They said for black students, it's assumed, often incorrectly, that they don't care about school. And that's why they're acting out. That's what Yale had to say about educating black students. Okay? Now, sometimes our impulses as teachers is to just run over the mistakes while we're teaching, while we're delivering the lesson, as if it didn't happen. However, a better way to handle it is just to stop and correct yourself in front of the class. And that's transparency. We're going to go around the horn real quick, and I'm going to ask this question. First question, the panel's open, is the topic for tonight: are we teaching what needs to be taught? What was the first thought that went through your mind when you got this topic for tonight? Who wants to go first?
If no one wants to go first, I'll go first. Are we teaching what needs to be taught? For my 28 years teaching in various classrooms, especially K through 12, I've taught special ed and also general education. From what I remember, we are not teaching what needs to be taught for students to be able to go out into the world and make the strides and the progresses that they need to make. But we can't blame it all on the students. Everyone has a part to play in this. The parents of these students, the educators of these students, and also a lot of it falls on the state in which you live in. From what I know, the last 10, 15 years is that the teachers can only teach so much because so much is devoted to teaching to the test. School districts are concerned about the students passing the test at a certain level until the focus is not on making sure that the students know more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic like it was back in the day. They're really trying to incorporate additional subjects and make them a focus, but I feel that they're not doing a very good job about it. But you really have to go back to the foundation when you talk about, are we teaching what needs to be taught? Because before students go to school, it's the parents' responsibility. And it has always been the parents' responsibility. And even outside of school, the parents can educate their children no matter how old they are, because there's so many things outside of school that can help students learn about things that are not being taught in the classroom.
Now, Felicha, what state are you hailing from? What state are you in? Like, of the 50 states, which state? Okay, see, now Texas, what's that? The Senate Bill 3? There's a section in this House bill that is saying when you teach the kids, teach them directly the standards. Do not veer off from the standards, because we do not want any kind of incident to happen. So we want you to teach them directly to that standard. And we want it to be, I think they call it in Texas, TEKS specificity. What's your thoughts about that? The panel's still open.
Teach to the test. I think that's all it is in a nutshell. Teach to the test, which means I'm only teaching you what I want you to know, but it's not teaching you what you need to go past high school into college and ultimately into the real world.
That's good. That's good. Let's go around the panel. Same question. Are we teaching what needs to be taught? What was your thoughts when you got the topic for tonight?
Well, one of the first things. You got it, Billy?
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Dr. Poussaint.
Okay, buddy. One of the first things that I thought about was I just reflected on back when I was in school, and as today, I took French. French was my foreign language, hence the name Poussaint, I guess. I guess I was born to marry a man with a French name.
Right.
Poussaint. I took French for many, many years. I could read French. I could conjugate verbs and do the whole thing. I could read it better than I can speak it. And I just wish that it was taught to us in a practical manner, that we would use it in practice. Instead, we were memorizing things to pass a test. And so what's lost in education to me is the practical applications. I don't teach K through 12, but I teach college students, and I consider myself a scholar practitioner, which means I take the academic portion, the theories, the concepts of what is taught, but I also apply it to practical purposes so my students can know that if they're an HR professional, they know how to go back into their job and apply those concepts in a practical way. And even when I was growing up in school, we took sewing class, we took typing, we took things that were practical that we could actually use. But the math today is confusing, and I know that some parents have a difficult time supporting their children in school or helping them with their homework because they don't even know how to do the work. That's a drawback. So another thing is resources to teachers, right? Do they have the proper resources to teach to every student who is different? Because every student has a different learning style, whether it's auditory, tactile, or visual. Are they able to incorporate all of that based upon each individual student learning? No, they don't have the resources for that. They're trying to manage a classroom. They're also trying to manage behavior and discipline problems because some parents think that that's what the school is for, and which is not true. So unfortunately, teachers today don't get the support that they need. They don't have the additional resources. So they're stuck in this box to teach to the standards, to teach just what the standards are, and let's pass this test and let's keep these scores up so that our states can look pretty good among the ratings. So that's the downside to it all. So I don't think that we are teaching what needs to be taught.
That's good. Practicality. Buddy, I can't wait to hear what you got to say.
Well, let's compile what was already said, and then let's move on to the practical side, because at the end of the day, knowledge is worthless if we don't understand application. You can have all the knowledge in the world at your fingertips, which, by the way, almost all of these kids do when they're holding a smartphone in their hand, but they can find the information. They have no clue how to use it. Mm-hmm. Now, I ran several businesses in Arizona, and when I would hire somebody, and I would hire them for their skill sets and their academic performance, what was always lacking was their behavioral performance. In Arizona, they don't allow SCI. They don't allow social emotional instruction. They don't want the schools to teach how to act in a social situation. So in my business, which was 100% service business, I had people who were very intelligent, but they had absolutely no clue how to deal with customers or with their coworkers. So what was I supposed to do? Just have a continual revolving door and have these people go in and out because they didn't know how to behave or even how to talk to me as the owner. The second part of that equation is when I wrote my books on the optimal journey to oneself, I'm very, very clear that there's only one job a parent has in the world, and that is to deliver a perfectly functional adult to society. I didn't say teacher. I did not say school system. I did not say community leaders. I said parents. Because if all else fails, it falls back to the parent. It is their responsibility, and they should be held accountable when their children have no clue how to operate or do functionalities in society. And so, are we teaching what needs to be taught? No. When the school system refuses to let SEI in the door, when the school system basically placates a certain subset of parents and hurts all of the other parents and all of the other students, no, we're not going to be teaching what needs to be taught. I don't need people who know how to find something on a smartphone. I need people who know how to stand up in a room and act professionally and politely to clients and peers.
Ooh, I told you. I knew it. Research says 97 causes of and solutions to the achievement gap, which means they know the causes and they have the solutions. Yet, the disparity between teachers and student perceptions of students' ability to keep up with course demands has academic consequences that may further exhibit student success. And research also indicates that overconfident students may need to gain more metacognitive skills, which could be exacerbated by a lack of timely or frequent feedback regarding their academic progress. While setting long-term goals is important because of the identified gaps that we just mentioned in student learning, the students should work to set short-term goals and monitor their own progress. We're talking teacher facilitation, student-centered learning. Leveraging teachers' ability to provide ongoing support is a good solution. However, does it address the differentiated instruction needed for those Section 504 students, those special needs students, those emerging bilingual students, or ELL, as it allows teachers to take on leadership roles and share professional knowledge with their co-teachers, with their peers, to help students succeed. It is also a goal to meet those instructional strategies for delivering instruction in a way that helps develop students' ability to monitor their own learning, to monitor their own comprehension, to monitor their own success. And this is the access that we're going to be talking about tonight. This is that progress that we're looking for in education. This is that filling in the gaps as it relates to this topic tonight. Are we teaching what needs to be taught? Now, let me go to Dr. Poussaint. Dr. Poussaint, you said something that really touched me. You said you teach from a practicality standpoint. For me, what does practicality mean for you as it relates to experience? Because when I think practicality, I think I've experienced this. I've had to deal with this, and I had to learn my way of understanding it through experience. And as I learned, like I buy things from Amazon.com all the time, and I have to put them together. So I have to read the instructions. So I have to go through my mind. I'm problem solving through my mind, right? I'm putting things together. I'm reading the instructions, and if I need help, if I don't understand it, if I can't process it, then I'm gonna go to YouTube and I'm gonna look at a video, and I'm gonna go step by step on how to put those things together, whether it be a patio set or you name it. So my question to you is, what does that look like?
Yeah, like when I teach my ethics and leadership courses, I share with students. I worked for Fortune 100 company and been in the business work for over 30 years, so I have that type of experience to be able to share. So I talk about when I talk about the concept of those, I also give them a practical example of how I applied it or how it was applied in the real business world. For example, there was a time when one of my direct reports wanted to promote two individuals to a directorship. Well, in the organization, in order to have a directorship, you have to have direct reports. And she brought me into her office and said, me and one of my colleagues, she pulled out an org chart from out of the middle of her desk. And she said, this is the org chart, and you are going to report to this person, and the person, Chris, you're going to report to this person. She says, but really, you still do report to me. Well, of course, the hair on the back of my neck stands up and says, this is an ethical issue here. What she was doing was circumventing the compensation committee to promote two people without having physical direct reports. But on her paper, she's going to present this org chart. That did not sit well with me. That did not sit well with me at all. And what I did was I'm a very spiritual person, so I went home and I prayed about it. I called my old boss, who was a mentor, and I said, I can't stomach this. I had to even leave work that day because the unethical act that just was committed in front of me. And I prayed for a solution, and I tossed and turned that night, and actually I woke up the next day and I had a solution. I went to work, and I went to a colleague in the HR department. I said, Tom, do you still have is that position for a loss prevention manager still open? He said, yeah. I said, would you consider putting me in that position? And he's like, I would love to. So I began to work for him. What happened was that I knew that I couldn't tell anybody about this lady because she had worked for the company for 30 years. She was entrenched. But how do I deal with the unethical thing that faced me? Well, I removed myself from that situation. I got away from that person because I am a highly ethical person and I don't want to deal with it. So it's those type of practical applications and things that I introduce to my students, and they can relate to that. To say, if I ever get in a situation where I have to make an ethical decision, I'm going to stick with my ethics. But I got to figure out a way how I'm going to get out of this. Some people would have stayed in that situation and said it was okay, not my problem, whatever. But it bothered me so much because, like I said, I'm a highly ethical person and I like to do things the right way. And I don't like to be around. And I told the organization, if you all ever want me to testify for anything for this organization, I'm just let you know I'm going to be telling the truth. I'm not going to jail for none of y'all. So I have to. That's how I present things and say. What about the subject of emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is a skill that is learned. So I teach my MBA students to learn skills that will develop this emotional intelligence that you're going to need. And the main part of emotional intelligence, or EI, that many people miss is empathy. That's something that they have to seriously learn because a lot of people are not empathetic. You have to learn that empathy so that when you have an employee who comes to you and says, well, my child is sick. Well, your child was sick yesterday and you can't take off again. You can't deal with your employee that way. That's not how people show empathy and compassion for one another. So those type of things I try to put into practice, and students walk away, they understand that because I've given them a application in a practical situation where they could be confronted with. It's not some hypothetical. So it's easier for them to understand that, and that's the feedback I always get from my students. You put it in such a term way that I can understand it and I can apply it. So those are the kind of things that I use.
That was so good. Oh my goodness, that was good. That was good. Wow. What I drew from what you said was the first thing I heard a lot of gaps. I heard a lot of gaps when it comes to interacting with people. The first gap I heard was environmental gaps. I heard those environmental gaps, and that's so important, because when you are in a setting, then when you want to improve the setting, then you look for effective practices. And then I also heard some knowledge gaps. I want to open up the panel because I want to talk about gaps. I want to talk about the different types of gaps. I want to talk about the different types of learning gaps and how people perceive those learning gaps. I want to talk about communication gaps. That's a big one. Communication. Mm-hmm. That's a gap, especially when you want to be culturally responsive. Especially when you have a diversity, when you're with students from different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. Buddy Thornton, he is good with this. I have to give it to him. He's good with this. He's good. But I want to talk about learning gaps, because Felicha Stanley we got her on a panel tonight, and she has history with learning gaps, working with Section 504, working with the SPED population. She knows what those learning gaps look like. But the panel is open. Let's talk about these gaps and how people are, because one of the reasons why we're teaching wrong, or we're not teaching what needs to be taught, is because the lack of communication. Are we really communicating? Are we listening to the students, or are we just lecturing? Are we getting feedback? Is it transmitting? The panel's open. Who wants to take that first?
I'll jump in first, because I really want to give Felicha a chance to really put this one out there for everybody, and I know give her time to coordinate that. I want to thank Dr. Poussaint, because, as you know, Isaiah, you wrote the foreword to my first book, and my first book is the contemporary society through the lens of applied ethics. Notice I didn't say theory, I said applied ethics. And the reason it's that way is because people do not understand the connection between saying that they are going to be ethical and actually behaving as if they are ethical and showing the world that they are ethical. And so, where's the gaps? Here's the gaps. If you were to ask a parent how they would describe appropriate behavior in school, 75% of them would answer specifically based on self-interest. They would not answer where the collective is benefited. They would answer by the way their child alone is benefited. Mm-hmm. The gap that we have in education is the difference between what individual households believe education should be and what Einstein said almost 100 years ago. He said, we do not teach students. We create a very motivated, involved educational environment, and we allow the students who choose to do so to learn. That is what he said. And I base all of my educational pieces on, do you really want to be here? And if you need to be here, how can we get you engaged? I'll give you an example, and then I'll pass it off very quickly. If a student does not know how to read well, but they do have an avocation, they're a motorhead, or maybe they're a sports guy, or maybe they're whatever they are. If you were to say, look, I'm going to give you this assignment, I want you to get the most current magazine or the digital copy of something that you're interested in. I want you to read it, and I want you to give me a report on it next week. Now, does that make more work for the teacher? Yes, because guess what? Now the teacher needs to find out what the article is, and they need to go read it themselves to see if the student is actually doing the work. But isn't the job of a teacher to teach the child? Sometimes you have to take a non-standard approach to get to a standard result. And because no child is ever a standard child, that doesn't exist in society, we have to ideate so that we can take care of the individual, and those are your gaps.
Well said, well said. Ms. Stanley, talk about it.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to give just some basic information, first of all, about learning gaps. Learning gaps are basically learning deficiencies, and it's like a missing piece to a puzzle. You have one part what a person should know, and on the other hand is what they actually do know. Think of it as a gap between what students are expected to know according to a particular school district or a particular state, and then what they find out that particular student knows based on their testing. And I say that to say this is, if the teacher is teaching everything that the student should know to pass this test, and they take the test and they don't pass at the level at which they projected, then you say, okay, this student has a learning gap. This student has not missed a day in class. The teacher has taught everything in the curriculum that the district said teach according to the state. But then so many students, they feel still should be at a particular level, but they're not. The tests don't take into account that, hey, maybe the student's home life is not an environment where the student gets instruction at home. The student can only possibly get instruction at school, but they're not looking at that. Or they'll compare students from, say, one school district to another, and they'll say, well, the third graders in this school district are achieving in reading, they're achieving in science. And then they look across town and say, okay, well, they're in the same area, same type of teachers, but why is this group over here not doing as well as the other? They're not looking at all the different facets that go into the learning gap. People don't really put those two together. Learning gaps are serious because we have general ed students in the classroom, we have special ed students in the classroom, and they are all getting different types of learning. The students that have special needs, they're getting a person specifically working with them, and the students that are in the general population, they're not getting that. But if you look at it, there's certain rules and regulations with the special needs students as opposed to the general ed students. So they look at the learning gap because special students are taking the same test that the general population students are taking. So there's not really too much that can be done other than making sure that it's equal access to all the students in the classroom, and the students that need the extra help, make sure that they get the extra help so that the gap is not so widened, so that the gap would be actually closing in.
I heard motivation, and I believe motivation has a gap. So let's just say motivation gap. Let's say sometimes a student knows what they need to do, right? Let's say they even know how to do it, but they still don't want to do it. They know what to do. They know how to do it. They know it in and out. They don't want to do it though. That's a motivational gap. That is a motivational gap. Buddy, I'm about to come down your lane. Many children struggle with motivating themselves to complete tasks, especially when they feel like you're teaching to the test. They don't see the real life scenario in what you're teaching. Let's talk about algebra. Let's talk about those subjects that they don't really see like, okay, how am I going to apply this? I'm going back to Dr. Poussaint. How am I going to apply? How is this applicable to me in my day-to-day? Right? How am I going to motivate myself to get past this? What's my motivation? Okay, college. But what if they don't want to go to college? What if their dad is a carpenter? What if their dad makes a lot of money working for a construction company, building houses or laying concrete or doing plumbing? Do you really need algebra for that? Buddy Thornton, my question, why is there a need for more support for educators understanding the skill building to prevent and address troubling behaviors that evoke student disciplinary infractions due to the lack of positive behavior intervention strategies? And I think motivation is tied into that. But that's my question for you.
Well, when I visited your school, Isaiah, and we worked with a particular student, it wasn't about you not doing your job well. It was that student feeling like they were not being given a full measure of attention from you. And we solved that problem in 10 minutes? Maybe less.
Yep. It was amazing.
Has to come from within. Yes. And that student went on to be an amazing student. The bottom line is, when you can find a student who's out of phase with motivation, what you have to do is you have to understand what they are looking for. I went to school in the 1960s. There were a lot of kids that said, why do I need to learn how to do math? One of them was one of my cousins. Well, my uncle owned a concrete contracting company. So my uncle looked at him and said, do you know what the volume is of a truck? He says, yeah, it'll hold 8 yards of concrete. So do you know how much the volume is, 8 yards of concrete? And it dawned on him, if you can't do the math, you can't run the business. You can't be involved in the business. Carpenter's the same way. You know, I can take a string that's 12 feet long, I can tie a knot on it at 3 feet, tie a knot at another 4 feet, and I can make a perfect right angle because I know how to use math to make a perfect right angle to make a corner. Students have to have basic skills because application is in everything we do. And the motivation is lacking because no one is explaining to the students the practical reasons why they need these skill sets. Once you can get them to accept the skill set that they're missing, especially teenagers, they only want to do three things. They want to know where they fit in the world, they want to socialize, and they want to see just how much they can do to get around the teachers or the parents. So if you co-create the environment with them and you show them, no, this is what you need to learn because I'm going to have to leave you to the wayside if you can't learn it, and you co-create with them instead of just controlling them, teachers or parents, they will learn what they need to learn. But you have to explain to them what application is. And Dr. Poussaint is 100% correct. Nothing happens without, if they don't buy into the application, they don't need the knowledge. That's what they think.
But buddy, now I'm going to give you props, but let me tell you, the listener audience, something about Buddy that you may not know unless you've been listening to the podcast. One of Buddy's secrets to his insight is that he lives in a 4-generational home. Okay, so he's looking at these perceptions every day from, well, buddy, I'm gonna let you tell it. What are the ages that live with you in your home range from?
My oldest daughter is 49. Two of my granddaughters live with us. We have two, and they're in their 20s. The youngest one's 24. And then we have a couple of great-grandchildren. The youngest is 4.5. There's another one that's 8. And so I'm in a living version of what Jean Piaget had in the 1890s to the 1905. Everything he did was with his own children and the children in the neighborhood. and I'm just reliving his reality, and I get to see it in real time. And, you know, there's no better crucible than having to have boots on the ground and answer a 4-year-old's question when you're 70. I mean, you have to apply. They don't understand anything else. So if you don't teach them the application, they're not going to learn the knowledge. So, you know, that it is a living world we live in, and that's one of my biggest advantages.
Application.
Wow, he has baby boomers, millennials, Gen Zs, Gen X. He has it all in his household.
Let me go here. And the panel's open. This is a crucial question. And this question hurts me to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Why do some teachers treat special education students unfairly? The panel's open.
What do you mean by that? How so?
Well, they don't teach them at all. They pass them by. Oh, well.
Oh,
Too bad.
I thought.
Sorry you didn't get it.
Wow.
Moving on to the next one. You know what? You're going to fail anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate you as a fail, and I'm going to focus on these other students. Why do some teachers treat special education students unfairly?
Can I jump in here at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. Times do change from year to year, but I started out in special education in the early 90s, and I saw transition from teaching in predominantly white districts and predominantly white schools to mixed schools where minorities were maybe 40% and the majority was 60%, and to the non-traditional charter school where it was 90% African American. My experience with the elementary grade level teachers treating special ed students in that way is because they had no knowledge of special ed at all. Wherever they went to get their teacher certification through college or alternative certification, it appears that they did not have the classes. Another possibility is that person themselves feel that I didn't sign up for this, or I went to college to teach general ed. I didn't want a classroom, say, 50-50 with special ed students. Because when you feel like you're incapable of making a difference or even doing the borderline of what you should be doing, you don't want those students in your class. I've witnessed in the middle schools where the students didn't want a special ed teacher in the classroom so that they wouldn't be singled out. But the middle school teachers are more willing to treat them like they're normal, because some of them are very normal, depending on the level of disability. They knew that, you know, at that point, if a student is just in there because of, say, a learning disability in reading, writing, or math, that everything is good. They should be right on the same level with the majority of the students. There's no excuse for teachers to treat students that are labeled special education any differently. Sometimes I think, like I said before, it's with the individual themselves, because everyone has a choice to teach or not to teach. And you know that if you're teaching in today's time in the United States and you're in a K through 12 school, you will have students that are labeled special education in your class. It's not a maybe. It is you will have special ed students in the classroom, and you should not treat them differently. If you have a problem with this population of students, you're in the wrong profession. There's been numerous times that I've witnessed special ed, general ed teachers treating special ed students differently, and almost to the point where it crosses the legal line. And I've stood up to teachers before, and it was a very gentle reminder that you have a responsibility to teach this student the same way you teach all the other students. And if you don't know, you need to ask the special ed person on your campus to inform you, because you can get to the point where there's a thin line between a legal issue, and if you get to that point, then you need to think about your license.
Okay, Felicha, let me go here with you, because see, you're stepping on some toes here. You're stepping on some toes here. I'm coming down your lane now. I'm coming down your lane. So is the gap of disparity between teachers and student perceptions closing, or is it widening? And I want you to think about this, because we know that the whole gap issue or topic is all about giving students access to high quality education, to high quality curriculum, high quality learning materials. Now we know that it's the learning materials, but this is what the stats say. We're talking statistics. We're saying statistics say that most of your special needs students, talking from a demographic point of view, most of them are either American Indian or African American. So your highest percentage of special needs students are either American Indian or Alaskan Native or black. Now let's look at this, because if you go back to 1973, the Civil Rights Act said that we're going to give all students access to free and appropriate education. And then you had Section 504 move on from that. Now this was a hybrid of, and I know Buddy talks about this all the time, the 1954 case, that separate but equal case, Brown versus the Board of Education. My question to you is the gap of disparity between teachers and students' perceptions, is it closing or is it widening? Is it widening? Because with this evidence that we have here, what's your thoughts?
My thoughts are, it depends on where you're located, what state you're located in, and it even goes down to the city. If you're in a major metropolitan city, or if you're country, rural, a lot has to do with that. Because if you look at, you said American Indian. So where are the majority of the people that are American Indian? Where do they live in the United States?
Alaska.
Just Alaska, okay.
And maybe Oklahoma. Oklahoma and Alaska.
And Oklahoma. Yeah. So so that would be more just, that particular area of students. But if you look at it overall across the board, that's only a small population of students.
through 2023 school year, 7.5 million students ages 3 to 21 receive special education and related services under the IDEA. Right? IDEA means Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And then they said about 2/3 of that number were male. So like that's about 65% were male that were receiving special needs accommodations and modifications, and then 34% were female. So that's what the stats are saying.
Yes, I definitely believe that, because every single classroom that I've worked in, the majority of them were male. And just to say, when I worked in school districts that were predominantly white, of course, then the number of white Caucasian students outnumbered the African American Black students especially in each classroom. So, yeah, I think that the gap is not necessarily widening at this point. I think it's slowly, the needle is moving. Over a 10-year period of time, that's not extremely bad, but
let's open up the panel. I think, is that fair? Can we open up the panel and get some other points of view on that? Is the gap closing or is it widening? And I want y'all to think about what's going on in the political arena as well. The panel's open. Are those gaps, are they closing, or are they stretching even wider as it relates to the disparity between teachers and student perceptions? Yeah, go ahead.
I have to agree with the one statement. It really does depend on the demographic and the geo fencing that we're talking about. Arizona, where I live, Phoenix is 6 million people. The entire state only has 7.4 million people. So you have a huge, unbelievably flat pancake that's only got 1.4 million people, and where you are located is where you are going to school. So if the gap is widening or shrinking, makes no difference because you are geotagged into that place. Now, Arizona has a law that says parents can take their kids to any school that they choose to take them to. And so if someone's going to drive 50 miles in from a rural area to put them in a better school in the city, well, if they have the means, they might, but that's not what research shows. But here in the metropolitan area, the gap is widening every day, every week, every month, every year because of the voucher system and the ability of parents to say, this school is underperforming, I'm going to take my kids and take them over there. And their neighbor says, if I do that, my kid is going to benefit, but I'm going to lose my job because I don't have the means to get them to and from every day. So we have turned separate but equal from 1954 into equal but separate. Now, everyone has the right to do it. Very few people have the practical ability to do it. So who benefits? Only the affluent population. And there's a huge gap, and it's only hurting mostly the disadvantaged students.
Okay, Dr. Poussaint, from a historical standpoint, now I want to talk about curriculum. And I know you teach higher ed, but I think this still applies somewhat. Yeah, I do. So how are we, what needs to happen? What are you seeing as far as gaps when you get students directly from secondary education? What are the misconceptions that you are seeing, okay, as it relates to economics? Because we teach them economics on the basic level in secondary education. And so we give them to you to build on. So we give them some basic foundational truths, a basic framework, if you will, right? but what could we do to explicitly teach them or clearly teach them in a way that they understand, in a way that they are adaptable, in a way that they can use real life experiences and they can become practical, right? How can we meet those needs of those students before we turn them over to higher ed? That's my question.
Before you turn them over to higher ed. I don't know. When I was looking at this question about instructional design of lessons, explicit, adaptable, and flexible, the curriculum should include all of those to meet students' needs. But do they all do that? The responsibility, teachers have to be so flexible in the way they teach to individual students. I teach a lot of international students as well, which is like teaching a ESL class, because their English is not that strong, their writing is definitely not that strong. So, again, I like to give immediate feedback to students to improve their writing, their speaking, or whatever it may be. But that's important, that feedback, giving them that feedback. And here's a new thing on this that I would say, that AI now, artificial intelligence, is the new technology now that's sort of interrupting education and higher education, and especially higher education, because now when you get a student's paper, you gotta make sure that it's not full of plagiarism and it's full of AI stuff. So, but as technology changes all the time, it's constant. It changes so fast, and so we're dealing with AI today. Who's to say what we're going to be dealing with even next year? So, instructional design must keep up with new technology, new ways for students learning. I mean, the kids today, or the students who are actually going into college today, they don't know what a landline is. Everything is right in their hand, and everything is technology, and so higher ed or even education has to adapt to the new technology that's always increasing. And that's where you come in. We're adaptable, flexible to all of these types of learners.
Now, that was fire what you said. I'm not even going to go back over that. Y'all got to listen to that on the podcast. You gave me some topics, though, for some new episodes. I'm going to say that. I'm going to leave it right there. Listen, we are out of time. What are the takeaways for tonight? Who wants to go first?
Are we teaching?
I'll jump in and then let the ladies. Yeah, go ahead if you want to go ahead. No, here's the thing. Okay, you open the door on AI. I'm going to tell you, as a enhancing editor for college professors and people who write books and give them to me and say, "Can you make this the best that it can possibly be?" It takes me literally about 15 seconds to know whether AI was involved in writing the book or not. The manuscript is at best average. AI is the world's greatest compiling tool. We can never overlook that. It can get data out of anything that it has access to. But what it cannot do is it cannot do human nuance. It doesn't understand what extant information is, so it will not create new information. It will only refold what is in front of it. So it's the world's best average. AI, if you want to know what we're teaching wrong, we're letting people use AI. The AI is a business tool at best. It is not an academic tool. It fills the need of businesses who need just good enough. The average reading ability of business people is between 5th and 7th grade in the United States, and even those who've had some exposure to college. So they need just the world's best good enough. So AI is great, but does that answer the bell when we're talking about academics? And then when you're comparing undergrads to postgrad, you're talking about high school students, only a certain percentage are going to go to college. If we're going to teach them the skill set they need to survive, yes, we need to allow them to use some aspects of AI, because in the workplace, that's what's going to be expected. But for those who are going to go on and create new things, and do new things at a higher level from a college perspective, we need to explain to them that AI is a tool, not an academic crutch. So no, we're not teaching what's right if we're letting people use AI.
Impact of Educational Leadership Podcast. Facebook,